the process for me to actually qualify for the Olympics, that Olympic year was the worst moment of my life. It got to the point some days where I was like so broke because I didn't have anything that I was literally like on the phone with every sponsor I could trying to like get certain things just to like survive. The little money that my parents and my family were able to give me was coming down to decisions every day of, are you going to feed yourself? It's no joke.
Wow.
The very little where it's just like, are you going to like eat today? Or are you going to spend this to go slide on the track? And I remember it got really bad when I was overseas in Germany. I had literally spent my last dollar on the last race that we were there. I didn't have a ticket home. I didn't have any place to stay. So I sent a message to a friend of mine that still talked to me on my team. And I said, listen, I just need like 2 or 3 days because they were supposed to stay there for like 2 weeks to go and slide on the tracks that we were staying at. So I was just like, how in the world are people knowing where I'm at? So I show up to the house where my team is because my team said that just like, listen, we'll let you in the back door. Just come and stay in the basement. We'll bring you food. It's like literally like one of those childhood movies where you sneak in your best friend and then your parents come home and you don't even realize that you got someone living in the attic. This Olympic journey takes a lot out of people. You know, like I was 190 at the time. I think I had dropped down to like 160 at that point. So when I show up to the house, they got word that I was trying to sneak in. So what they did was they flew my team that night. They flew them to Canada and they left me there. And I'm stranded in Germany. I don't speak the language. For 4 days, I'm living underneath a porch in the middle of winter. I remember breaking into the track, climbing to the top of the ski jump. I remember calling my dad. I was like, I'm just gonna end things here and I'm gonna call my dad to tell him I love him. When my dad answered the phone, he's like, I've been praying for you because God's been telling me that you're in trouble. He's like, everything's gonna be all right. You can be at the center of God's will, and that's when everything breaks loose. And that's when everything gets crazy, but that doesn't mean that that's not where you're supposed to be because there's something that you're supposed to learn there.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sons of Liberty podcast. My name is Sam Mealy.
My name is Hunter Young.
And today we have got the privilege of hearing from a man that went from Winter Olympian to conservative activist. How do you get there? How do you make that jump? We've got Anthony Watson, a Turning Point USA contributor and a former Winter Olympian in 2018 Olympics, right?
2018, yes sir.
Man, that's crazy. So what's the story there? Like, what was your life like before the Olympics? How did you get to the Olympics? Because that seems like such a pipe dream for most people. And how do you actually achieve a goal like that?
Well, first off, let me say thank you to the Souls to having me on here. It is cold. It is cold up here in Maine. How the heck do you guys live here all year? Like winter
we live
start
in Massachusetts, so
okay,
like we're
good.
A little bit.
We're from. He's from Plymouth, hometown of America. I'm from Cape Cod, so it's like a little bit warmer, but it's still pretty cold. Driving.
When they say a little bit warmer, it's 30 degrees here, and then you drive south.
It's like 40.
It's a whopping 43. I was like, it's t-shirt and tank top weather out there right
Yeah,
now.
we're in winter attire right now.
I know. I'm not in enough winter attire. You know, as a 6-year-old kid, it's just like there really wasn't much going on for me in my life back then. You know, I come from very humble beginnings and, you know, it's not really something that I enjoy talking about. You got people that love to like talk about where they came from, how they grew up and everything else. To me, it was a nightmare. You know, I grew up in a 1-bedroom apartment in the ghetto of a small suburb in South Jersey and stuff. And so, you know, growing up every day for a good part of my life was things that like, you know, a lot of people take for granted nowadays. I never had a bed of my own till I was 19.
Wow.
So we had a 1-bedroom apartment in the ghetto. My parents stayed there. That was where we did our homework. It's where we got up and got changed. It's where all of our clothes were. It was just like, you know, you can imagine that kind of space when you have to share it with like 6 people, my parents and my 3 sisters. My sisters slept on a pull-out couch, all 3 of them, and then I slept on a box spring in the corner of a kitchen. So the only thing I got to snuggle with up at night and keep me warm were the roaches and just the draft breezes on the hot summer days and, you know, in the winter and stuff. So it's just like my future at the very beginning was one that, you know, when a lot of people look at it, they try to use it for other ways and other areas and stuff, but you know, in the end of it all, it's just like the only future that I had growing up in that kind of area was drug dealing, gang banging, prostitution, that kind of stuff that a lot of people use just to like get like a quick track into a lifestyle that didn't really lead anywhere except, you know, like jail and inevitably death. But I remember at the young age of 6, it was in the early 90s, I was watching Michael Johnson run in the 98 Olympics that were happening in Atlanta. And I told my dad, I said, I really want to be in the Olympics someday. So he was just like, he told me 3 things. He said, you trust God, you make good decisions, surround yourself with people that make good decisions. And he's like, you'll be surprised where the Lord will take you. And didn't really work out for me in the realm of track and field because I tore my knee the year of the London Olympic trials and then saw that all of everything that they had was gone. So all of my time when I tried to like make a comeback after like healing from that tear, I was still quick. I just wasn't as quick as I used to be. So my qualifying and my dreams as being a track and field Olympian were kind of shot. So I sat down one day as like a 21-year-old, went through every single Team USA sports team, and then saw that bobsledding and skeleton and winter sports was the only Olympic sport that took tryouts. So I'm used to this kind of weather in a way, because for 3 years I lived in Lake Placid, New York, which is brutal. I was like them Canadian cold fronts that slap you in the face to say good morning, and then I say kick you in the rear end to say good night at the end of the day. You know, the only thing you have is like a skin tight unitard, and then you're going at speeds of like 75 to 80 miles per hour in the dead of winter, you know, trying to do that. But insane. I mean, like, that was the only road that was available, but you know, it's one that I committed myself to, and you know, now I get to sit here and tell everyone that story. But I mean, like, at the end of the day, when I share that, I tell people I don't hang on to that. That's not who Anthony Watson is. It's not who I am. It's just what I got to do. You know, there's more to me than just, you know, an Olympian, because every athlete that's been great in the past, it's just like they all become a has-been or a who did what when their prime is over, because you can't be an athlete forever. Right. It's supposed to be something that opens up other opportunities for you to now help other people reach and achieve the goals that they want. And so mine kind of got cut short a little bit, but you know, at the end of the day, it's just like it was something that a lot of people deemed impossible, because coming from the streets of New Jersey to now going to the biggest stage of sports in the world, you know, it's something that a lot of people don't really give anyone the hope to do, but, you know, very few people. It's a very small window. But, you know, for very small windows, we have a very big God that makes bigger windows that, you know, when you follow him carefully, he'll lead you through it. So that's how I got there.
Interesting. What is like, how do you actually get into the Olympic? Can you like go through like the nuts and bolts of it? Of like how you actually
qualify for the Olympics?
Yeah, like all of that whole process. I'm curious. I didn't even know, like, I thought people from the Olympics kind of like just took a look at all the athletes in their country and then just picked, all right, we want you, and then nobody else gets a chance. I didn't even know there was like such thing as tryouts.
Oh yeah, well I mean Olympics. Like there's tryouts for the team that the country that you represent, and so when I tried out in, I think it was 2012, I applied to try out in 2012, and then I chickened out and I made some excuse, and the Team USA was like, oh well, we're sorry you couldn't make it this year, maybe next year. So 2013 I went up to Lake Placid, New York, and they test you in 4 areas. They test you in speed, agility, strength, and reaction. So they had you do a couple of tests. So they'd have you do a 40-meter sprint to see how fast you are. They have you do a broad jump. They have you do a shot toss. Then they have you do your max power clean and your max back squat. And then based off of that is how they tier you into what kind of athlete the seriousness of what kind of athlete they take you. Now, my weightlifting, because I had never like done like professional weightlifting like that, was like garbage. So, I mean, like, but I was quick. So they said, well, you can always get stronger, but if you're not naturally fast, they won't ever look at you. So I was talking to like Olympians that had been to like 2-3 Olympics before that, you know, trying to learn a lot from them. But, you know, like back in those days, I had like was so excited. I had spoken ahead of time and told everyone that I was going to the Olympics when I wasn't, because I didn't know the rules. So I had a lot of athletes that were really upset, being like, this guy just came out of nowhere and he's just telling everyone that he's going places and he's doing this and that. So I mean, like, before I even like started my rookie year, like I started with like a laundry list of enemies. So, but I mean, like, I was ignorant. I didn't know what the rulings were. So how it works is when you want to qualify for the Olympics, I think as far as skeleton, there's every nation that can compete, which is why, you know, every single like color of the rings, it represents 2 things. It represents like the 5 major continents that all the athletes come from. And then each color of the rings, blue, green, black, yellow, and red, all of those colors are at least in one of those colors, if not more than one of those colors, are in every single flag of the world. So it's kind of like an open invitation, the symbolism of what that means. Okay. So there are either 60 spots or there are 50 spots that are open for qualifications. But now how that works is, so example, you take like, you know, we're in North America, you take the Canadians, you take the Americans, you take like the Brits, the Germans, and everything else. Now, a lot of them have like 10 or 12 athletes that are in the top 60. But when it comes to Olympic qualifiers for 30 spots, that country is only allowed 2 or 3 athletes to compete. So you as a country may have 15 athletes that are in the top 60 that can qualify, but you have to pick 2. Then once you pick your 2, it goes down the list of like who else is ranked based on nation and placement and qualification and whatnot. So when it came to me, I got in I don't want to say a fluke because I earned that. I worked really hard, but I mean like a technicality is like what caused me to get into the Olympics because I almost didn't make it. I was in the bubble. So the top 60 had happened. I was ranked 83rd in the world at the time, but based on the rankings and where everything fell, there was 4 spots left and 5 athletes. So the athletes ranked before me was an athlete from Italy, an athlete from Israel, an athlete from Luxembourg, myself, and then an athlete from Ireland. And so we were all there waiting for 3 spots. So Italy got their spot, Israel got their spot, and the next spot was naturally supposed to go to Luxembourg because Russia had 3 spots that they qualified for. But the gold medalist who had won the Olympics the year before, Alexander Trechikov, in Sochi, Russia, got busted and banned indefinitely that year for illegal doping. And the state-sponsored thing, if you guys have ever watched the Netflix special Icarus, it's a really good one about how people have been cheating and how they've been like taking samples and like making them test positive so that people can now do all these kinds of things. And the way the Olympics works is that Russia holds a very prominent like stake in the Olympics because of all the money that they donate.
Yep.
And so naturally, like they ban people and they say indefinitely so that people feel satisfied. But then a few months later or a year later, they're just like, after investigation, we don't really see anything. So the ban is lifted. So he got banned 3 weeks before the final qualifiers went out. And so it was down to myself and Luxembourg, which naturally it should have gone to Luxembourg. But the guy who was competing for Luxembourg was 47. I was 28 at the time. And so his country forgot, and I use heavy air quotes, to submit certain things for him to qualify. So he got bypassed because Russia had 3 spots, but because their gold medalists couldn't compete, they took their top 2 athletes, which left 1 quota spot open. And so I get a call at 5 a.m. on January 19th saying like, hey, you've qualified for the Olympics. Congratulations. I think I still have that message. Let me see if I can read that for you.
Yeah, go for it.
Goodness gracious me, oh my. Oh, yeah, here it is. Yep. January 29th at 5:01 in the morning. It says, congratulations, International Bobsled Skeleton Federation offered Jamaica the final spot for men's skeleton just now. You are going to the Olympic Winter Games. Please start preparations. You will be contacted later today for admin and travel. Well done, Anthony. You did it.
Woohoo, Anthony.
Is that that's just a text?
That's just a text message.
crazy.
That's how I
That's
found
so
out.
crazy.
Wow. So Jamaica? What was the
Jamaica. Oh, yeah.
Jamaica.
Did I mention
You
that I
wrote me
didn't even
jersey?
compete for Team USA in my Olympic run?
Get out of here. So you grew up in Jersey. How did you get on the Jamaican team?
I have my dad who immigrated to the United States.
Oh, okay.
Legally to every camera that's pointed here. He came legally, you know what I'm saying? So he was born and raised in Jamaica, so I have dual citizenship through him. So when things weren't working out with Team USA because there was like 40 athletes and only 3 spots that we can take, and then the politics and then like the favoritism. So a lot of athletes that have the opportunity to compete for other nations started drifting and going out there. And when you leave a powerhouse like Team USA covers a lot of your travel, a lot of, you know, like your equipment costs, a lot of everything that you would need as an athlete. When you leave to go compete for a smaller nation, unless that nation is like a bigger country, but in this case, if you're having trouble competing and staying in the program in Team USA, no one's going to go to like the Germans because they dominate in this sport.
Yeah.
No one's going to go to any of the European countries because over there, this sport is considered professional, so they actually pay their athletes to race. The Olympics is an amateur athletic league. So all the athletes that compete there don't make any money. So for us, people like myself, we had to cover every single thing. Every single thing that you don't even think an athlete would have to cover, they'd have to cover. So I had to cover all of my sporting equipment, helmet, spikes, gloves, you know, like sled runners, the 2 metal rods underneath my sled, you know, like all the equipment that went from there. My coach, I had to pay for him. And like the best coaches in the world were like wanting, I think, like $190,000 a year.
Wow.
But they've produced medalists.
Yeah.
So, and then they make sleds. So the sled, a brand new sled or a used sled, it goes anywhere between $5,000 to $30,000. And when you see the size of these things, it's like, bro, like I could fit like my laptop in that bag. Is like, you know, but it's just like, that's the kind of things that go into it. Then you have to pay for every single time you go down the track, costs you about 40 or 50 bucks. So you have to have training fees. Then every single time you travel to another country, you got to go work out. So you got to go pay the gym to work out, not to mention hotels, all of your food, you know, like all of your costs, you know, like travel, flights back and forth, you know, and then when you come with sporting equipment, you know, like every single time I flew with my sled, it literally cost me almost $1,000 because I would have to pay for an extra bag, an oversized bag, sporting equipment, and then like that kind of stuff. And like you add all that up, it was like $900, like $1,200 sometimes, depending on the airline and stuff. So all of these are the things that like you have to like do during a year. And so when I was doing all of this, I was working 6 part-time jobs, you know, like cleaning toilets, you know, taking orders. I was like raking leaves, doing all this other stuff, working at like retail and stuff. And then all of my spare time, if I wasn't working, I was sleeping or trying to like stay in shape so that I could train.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's just like you see the devastation in a lot of athletes' faces when you watch the trials and they miss it by that much. That's why they're so upset, is because in every sport, and like now when you get to a national team, they'll cover certain things for you, but still there's things that you like have to cover and work on. But then once you're in the national team program, there's so much politics that go into it that, you know, unless you're a coach's pick or a coach's favorite or somebody that just gets along with the right people, I was like, you're somebody that's just expendable. So, you know, for me to get that, I think for an hour before I even told my family that I qualified, I just laid in my bed and I sobbed because this was 8 years of traveling. This is 8 years where I was gone from September until April. So that's 8 years prior to this where I missed 8 Thanksgivings, 8 Christmas holidays. I missed the birth of my nieces and my nephew. You know, I missed all of that kind of stuff and whatnot. And so, you know, that's what also made like interacting with people. And I tell everyone now, it's just like, do you miss it? I was like, no, because I said in those days, I said the only thing I was good at was saying goodbye to people. You can't be friends with anybody, you know, because you're only there around for people. I've got so many memories that I haven't even processed yet because of how things went for me and stuff. And I mean, like the process for me to actually qualify for the Olympics, that Olympic year was the worst moment of my life. So from September, a new coaching staff came in. They took over the program. They decided because I was American Jamaican, not born on the island, and I wasn't somebody that they could manipulate easily because I could actually speak for myself, they wanted to leave me out on a limb to dry. So they took the bobsled team, they took the men's team and the women's team, they got them all the endorsements, got them all the sponsorships, and I had to take care of everything myself. It got to the point some days where I was like so broke because I didn't have anything that I was literally like on the phone with every sponsor I could trying to like get certain things just to like survive. The little money that my parents and my family were able to give me was coming down to decisions every day of, are you going to feed yourself? And that's no joke.
Wow.
The very little where it's just like, are you going to like eat today? Or are you going to spend this to go slide on the track? And I'd be like, well, I'll just see if anyone has like leftovers, all things that like most people would never have to worry about, you know? And I remember, you know, them really giving it to me because instead of them, because I could have had a legal case against my organization and my federation if they had done things in spite, because then I could have made a case against them to actually make them stop. So they did all of these things to kind of slowly drain me to then make me quit. And I remember it got really bad when I was overseas in Germany. I had literally spent my last dollar on the last race that we were there. I didn't have a ticket home. I didn't have any place to stay because my friends that I were staying with were like all flying to European championships in Latvia the following week. So everyone was gearing up and getting ready to leave. So I sent a message to a friend of mine that still talked to me on my team. And I said, listen, I just need like 2 or 3 days because they were supposed to stay there for like 2 weeks to go and slide on the tracks that we were staying at down in Koenigsee. And so when I got there, lo and behold, I didn't know that one of my teammates who came from Team USA for bobsled, she had been to the Olympics before, so they were riding her coattails, trying to get her to be the spokesperson that got them all the stuff to get everyone sponsored and everything. She was the one, you know, like bad-mouthing me to my federation to like take the opportunities that I had worked for away from me. And I didn't know that until later. But so I was just like, how in the world are people knowing where I'm at? So I show up to the house where my team is because my team said that just like, listen, we'll let you in the back door. Just come and stay in the basement. We'll bring you food. It's like literally like one of those childhood movies where you sneak in your best friend and then your parents come home and you don't even realize that you got someone living in the attic, you know? And so, but I mean, like, that's where I was. And I mean, like, I'm 27 at the time. You know, and it's just like I'm a full grown adult, and it's just like this Olympic journey takes a lot out of people. You got people that are older than me because I'm 35 now, they're in their 30s, like almost 40s. And it's just like when they finally retire from the sport, they are in loads of credit card debt. Their credit's destroyed. Like they live at home. They have no prospects. They got nowhere to go afterwards because they put every single thing in here because that's what it requires, unless you get picked up by people that are willing to do that. And so all of that time going through all of that, it's just like I had lost weight. Like I was 190 at the time. I think I had dropped down to like 160 at that point because I just wasn't feeding myself, and I was still trying to qualify and do the things that I could to actually get a good chance to qualify for the games. So when I show up to the house, they got word that I was trying to sneak in. So what they did was they flew my team that night. They flew them to Canada and they left me there. And I'm stranded in Germany. I don't speak the language. I mean, I speak it now because of that situation, if I'm never stuck in a situation there. So, they leave. I'm stuck, for 4 days. I'm living underneath a porch in the middle of winter, and it's like cold. That's why, I mean, like whenever I hear snow and feel cold, man, I just get traumatized.
Flashbacks, yeah.
Oh yeah, man. It was rough. And so I remember breaking into the track, climbing to the top of the ski jumps. You know that thing where like they ski down and just launch themselves like miles down that ski slope, and I'm just like, that is crazy. You got to be crazy to do that. And so I remember calling my dad at the time. And just in a moment of like being stupid, I was like, I'm just going to end things here. And I'm going to call my dad to tell him I love him. And I think when my dad answered the phone, he was shocked to hear from me. But because, I'm in Germany calling to America. So he was just like, hey, I don't know what it was. But he's like, I've been praying for you because God's been telling me that you're in trouble. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I'm here. I'm feeling like this. They done left me. I said, I've lost everything. I said, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know how I'm going to get home. And then I just remember him saying like, well, get down. He's like, everything's going to be all right. And then he told me, he's like, you can be at the center of God's will. And that's when everything breaks loose. And that's when everything gets crazy. But that doesn't mean that that's not where you're supposed to be, because there's something that you're supposed to learn there. And so, the next day the cops show up, they ransack all of my stuff because someone had told them that someone's living there. I explained everything to them. They drive me to the airport. And then for a week, I slept in the lobby of an airport waiting for somebody to get me a ticket to come home. When I came home, I collapsed. I slept for like 6 days because I had been awake. I was normally a night owl, but back then I don't even know what kind of creature you would say I was, because I didn't sleep. I did not a nap, not nothing. I just stayed awake, not knowing if I'd be able to like get a plane ticket home. So just having to stay ready the entire time, and when I came home to the States, like I couldn't stomach any food, like I couldn't hold anything down. I think I slept for like 5 days without even waking up or moving. People thought I was dead. So this was December. And so my sister, I didn't see her for the entire 2 weeks that I was home. She was an ER nurse at the time. So she was working every day. And, the life of a nurse is, those 12-hour shifts, those things are brutal. But she did that for 18 days straight the entire time I was home. She came back after her shift, gave me a check for $10,000 and said that I just worked all of these days. So she said, now you need to take this. And she said, you need to go qualify. So from there, I flew to Switzerland, raced really well in Switzerland, came back to
Hold on. Let's just pause there. That's crazy. She just gave you a check for 10 grand.
Yeah, worked all those hours, those long, brutal hours for overtime during Christmas, like rush times in the ER.
Shout out sister. My goodness.
Taking shifts, so
that's crazy.
My family took up a lot of the brunt of all of that responsibility and stuff. And then, after all of that happened was when I was able to go and race in Switzerland. Then I came back to the U.S. Then after all of that getting there, my sled got lost in transit. So then I call, and this is the last qualifying race for me to race. So I call the airport. They said, oh, your airport's the things. So I go down, I drive, I'm in Lake Placid. I drive to Albany, find out that my sled didn't make it. My suitcase did, but my sled is still in Newark. So I borrowed my friend's car, who had bald tires, mind you. Bald tires, no heat in the car, and only one working headlight. And so I drove in the middle of a blizzard from Albany, from Lake Placid all the way to Newark in one night to go get my sled. And when I get there, those people were so rude, so mean, so evil, that kind of thing. I was just like, I need to get my sled. Well, I'm sorry, sir. We're not going to get that for you. I was just like, hey, I said, listen, I'm not a collegiate athlete just that can have my stuff replaced competing in a national tournament. I said, I'm qualifying for the Olympics. And I said, if I don't get my sled tonight, I said, I will burn this place down. And that was the wrong thing to say in an airport. You know,
Probably.
but I forgot to do something so pivotal. I took a moment to step aside. I prayed and I said, God, just help someone get me my sled. I said, I need this. I said, I did all of this. I've been through all this. You helped me get here. I said, this is not where my story ends. And so some guy overheard it. He's like, what's your bag look like? I described it to him because I didn't have pictures of it. And so he went in the back and an hour later came back with my sled, my equipment, my runners and everything else. And I the only thing I had, I said, listen, I don't got much. Here's $6. He's like, you want to tip me well? He's like, go race well and go qualify. I got back to Lake Placid with 4 hours before the last official training day happened for you to actually qualify to be in the race. And then once I did that, I came home and I died at the training center because I just needed sleep. But that next weekend, I think I placed in the top 3.
Wow.
So that right there shot me up in the rankings so that when it came time to actually getting the qualifications, I was in the proper position that when the spot was offered, it went to me. And I mean, like, nothing's left to coincidence. It was all a God thing, you know? And so when I finally got to the Olympics, that's not where the hardship stopped because my now I had to go deal with the federation that literally left me out to dry and all of that stuff to now go compete for them. And so the first thing I did when they said to me when I got there was just like, what are you doing here? I was like, well, I qualified. And so it was just 2 weeks of misery because before I got there, I think 10 days before the opening ceremony, because you're allowed to train, you get to go through the village, you get to do all those kinds of things. And so they stripped me of my coach. They stripped me of my coaching team. They took all the credentials that belonged to me to now give them to the girls to bring them a massage therapist, to bring them a mental coach. I was just like, what the heck you need that kind of thing for? I was like, this mental health crisis, yes, it's important in some areas, but sometimes people just need to be told, just suck it up and keep going.
Yeah.
In my honest opinion, you only have 2 options here. You either quit or you push through it. I was like, there's no in between for me to help you figure out how you feel about it. You either want this or you don't. So then they got upset that the Olympic committee reached out to me and they're just like, you don't have a coach here? And I was like, no. And they're just like, well, who made that call? I was like, listen, I've been getting yelled at and in trouble and stranded all year. I'm not trying to like actually give them a reason to like kill me. And so they were just like, well, listen, if you don't have a coach, we're not going to let you compete. Because if you guys don't remember, in 2010 over in Vancouver and the Vancouver Olympics in 2010, there was a luge athlete from the country of Georgia who hadn't been on the track, who came without a coach, but he qualified, didn't know the track well at all, and he flew out of the track, hit a pole, and died.
Oh my God.
So now the rules of the games for sliding athletes is just like you have to have a coach with you so that you're aware of this and that just for safety precautions.
Yeah.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. The one thing a coach will help you do is that, like, have you seen the Cool Runnings movie?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, see, there's the one scene in there where they're all in the bathroom and he just, like, the coach is like, curve 2, and then the guy's like, left. He's like, curve 7, and he goes out of order, and he's like, that's a right turn. Each curve is different. Each track is different. Some are a mile long. Some are a mile and a half long. Some are a mile and a quarter. Some are a quarter of a mile. Some go like up to 90 miles per hour in speed on bobsledding and in skeleton. Some go, you'll only hit like 68 miles per hour, which feels significantly different when you're the one doing it as opposed to everyone else. Like, that's still fast. You know, so you at least have to know as an athlete what direction the tracks, the curves go on the track. So I can tell you like Lake Placid's right now. So Lake Placid, just off of memory, is just like you go into curve 1. Curve 1 is a right turn. Then curve 2 is left. Curve 3 is left. Curve 4 is left. Then 5 is right. 6 is right. Then 7 is left. Then it goes 8 is a right turn, 9 is a right turn, then 10 is a big right turn. Then you go into a straightaway, then a right turn into 11, then curve 12 through 14 isn't alternating, so it goes right, left. Then goes a straight shot through 16, then 17 is a left, 18 is a right, and then 19 finishes as a right turn, and then you cross the finish line. So you have to know that.
Okay.
Because
So-
there have been tracks that I have been in where I didn't know where I was going, and I was like, oh, what's coming? And then if you don't know what's coming, that's how you flip, and that's how you fly. So
I gotcha.
So you got a coach.
I eventually got a coach, only because the Olympic Committee strong-armed them into giving me one. And so they sat me down, and the first thing they did when they sat me down in that meeting was this: they show me a one-way ticket back to the States, and they're just like, this is yours, and you have 10 seconds to explain why we shouldn't send you home. I said, I don't know what this meeting is for. They said, we had the Olympic Committee say this. And like, I said, first of all, I was like, you make it sound like I have these people on speed dial. I said, they called me because my coach that you took from me said that they're sending me here ill-equipped.
So the federation took your coach away, and then the Olympics said you have to have a coach. So you're like, talk to the federation.
Exactly.
Like, this had nothing to do with me.
And so all of that work went into like now fixing something that I didn't cause. And then a whole laundry list of other issues started happening now. So it's just like they did everything to, now that I qualified for the Olympics, make it impossible for me to stay in. And like I said, just another miserable experience. But then when they found out that I didn't have anything to do with it, that's when the tone switched. And everything got better when my dad showed up. Because a lot of Jamaican men grow up without fathers. Like my dad is the oldest of 4, but like, you know, his father in the island had 17 kids. My uncle, who's his brother, because they all came from my grandmother, you know, so my uncle, his father was the father of 23. And then my aunt, her father was the father of 11. You know, and then my baby uncle, who was born here in the States, he came from like her late husband and stuff. So it's just like, you know, you got a lot of people that live a certain way that make people feel like they don't have anything that's like worth anything. And so leading all of that, my dad showed up, and I remember like one day, it's just like they fired the coach that helped the girls bobsled team qualify for the Olympics. And then after that was when my dad showed up and they were giving me a hard time. So I walk in with my dad. We're in the cafeteria, which is a big indoor football stadium. And I mean, like, you talk about amazing food. It's just like they had food from every continent that you could imagine. They had food from everywhere because people that come there, they want their own native foods because, you know, it works for them. It's the kind of stuff that they're used to eating. I mean, like me, I was just picking out. I was having a buffet, you know what I'm saying? I was at the Asian continent table one day. Then I was at the, you know, the European continent. Then I stayed away from the American food. All we had was just like burgers, fries, and like roast beef. So... and pizza, of course.
Sad.
But I was gonna say, I was just like, I mean, like, I think the kitchen closed at like 9 every
Get your
night.
seed oils here. Seed oils here.
Man, I love my seed oils, man. What you talking about? I ain't got no hair that I got to protect on all this stuff. So all that happened. So then my dad finally got to see what was going on, and they had never met my father. They had never seen him. So like they're yelling at me. My dad gets in between me and them, and he's like, "That's enough. That's not going to happen anymore." And they're like, "And who are you?" He's like, "I'm his dad." And it was like privates to a 4-star general that they were like, "Oh my goodness, we love your son so much. We can't believe that he did this. All this stuff is amazing and here and there." And then on top of that, after my dad had left, they pulled me out of trainings. They said, "We need you for media days here." When I got there were no media available spots for me. So they literally were just sticking it to me anywhere that they could get. Then on the day of my actual race, the only person that was there to support me was my dad and my coach that had been there with me the entire time, which is really all you need. But, you know, then they required me to be there for the females when they were competing and whatnot. But they took them away, gave them all these beautiful treatments and everything else and whatnot. But I mean, like me, that was my Olympic experience. But at the end of the day, I'm an Olympian.
You get to put Olympian in your bio for the rest of your life. So,
Well, I mean, sometimes I forget. And to be honest, like when that was over, you know, they were impressed, but then they did the exact same thing to me the season after. But after being in the Olympics was when I was able to now go to companies and be like, "Listen, I competed in an Olympics." So I said, if I made it to the Olympics, and I told them broke, homeless, and starving, I was like, imagine what I could do if I was well fed, if I had places to sleep, and I had the proper team and coaching around me. So I got picked up by Nike. I got picked up by Gatorade, Sprite, United Airlines, Mercedes-Benz, you know, like Hampton Inn and Suites, and a bunch of big private loan sponsors. And so then came 2019 when all the George Floyd stuff was happening and all the BLM activists and all the burning, looting, and murdering was happening through BLM and everything else. Cities going up in flames, all these people getting irate over something that was caused by someone's stupidity in a moment where they got caught for doing something illegal, you know? And so I was at a race, and I remember a journalist coming up asking me, because I was only one out of 2 black people competing in that. But I've never looked at myself as somebody that is underprivileged or inferior to people just because, you know, of the color of my skin. I remember trying to use that as an excuse when I was in high school. And my dad at the time did the best thing that a father could do for his son. He beat that out of me. I'm not even joking. Like literally told me, he's like, "You don't ever go anywhere and use that as an excuse." He was like, "You can't change that." And he's like, "You should never let anyone make you feel bad." He's like, "Now, not everyone's going to appreciate you. Not everyone's going to like you." But he's like, "You move anyway." And that's the kind of mindset that I've had since then, you know, because I had somebody that was able to model that for me and to put me through that and to actually teach me what being a man looked like. So when I saw all these people that were just mindlessly destroying the places that they called home, that hurt my heart, because I'm just like, you know, there are racist people who are black. And now we live in a society and a culture where people who look like myself will do all of these heinous things. And just because they get to play the black card, now you have to prove why you're not racist, puts the burden of guilt on you. And they get to get away with all this kind of stuff. And that's what I said in an interview. I said, I think BLM is stupid. I said, and the girl got so wide-eyed. This Latvian blonde hair, blue-eyed, typical European looking female. And she was just like, could you care to explain? I was just like, you have to be an idiot to bring strangers from another neighborhood into your neighborhood to burn up your belongings and everything else. They get to bust themselves home, and then you got to go back and now clean up and live in your mess. I said, how does that make any sense to anybody else? I said, people have hated each other since the beginning of time. And I said, race is not something that you can control. I said, do you know that the Japanese hate the Chinese and the Chinese hate the Koreans? And I said, to me, I can't tell them apart. I said, my mother is Puerto Rican. I said, do you know that Puerto Ricans hate Cubans? I said, Panamanians hate El Salvadorians. Ecuadorians hate Guatemalans. I said, and then I said El Salvadorians, I say hate Brazilians, but almost every Hispanic culture spits on the race of Mexicans. And I said, and don't you dare call an Italian a Sicilian. I said, racism exists everywhere for people hating a group of people for something that they cannot control. And I said, that bothers me, because I said, all lives matter to me, because I said, it doesn't matter if you were black. It doesn't matter if you were white, European, Native American, whatever you look like. I said, if something evil was done to you, I would have a problem with it. And I said, that's the stance that everyone needs to take now, because that's how we're going to unify. But I said, all lives won't matter. And she's like, well, what about this whole all lives won't matter until black ones do? I said, well, first of all, black lives have to matter to each other first. Mm-hmm. I said, when people look at the black community, they don't see anything that's worth respecting because we don't respect ourselves. I said, we've taken every derogatory term and we use that now as a term of endearment. And I said, we're allowed to use it, but other people don't. I said, I have never seen any other race outside of ours greet each other with derogatory terms that now they exclude other people from using. I said, they love the people that come that they know. And I said, they like to learn about the people they aren't. And I said, but when people look at us, the way that we treat each other, the things that we do to one another, and the excuses that we make in light of that, I said, that bothers me. And then 2 weeks after giving that interview was when all of my sponsors said, yeah, we're not working with you anymore. And then on top of dropping me, they sued me to get all the money that they had given me and the money that I had spent on my training back.
What did they sue you on? On what grounds?
Using common sense and logic. That's probably what it was.
I violated the moral clause
okay.
of my contracts and stuff, because that was when everyone was like, hey, end racism, do this and do that. And all these people were just following a trend of something that, in all honesty, hasn't made any community in the world better. So, I said all of that. So you can imagine how devastated I was when I just told you everything I had went through, everything I had gone through, all the ups and downs and the times where my life literally almost felt like it was going to end, to now come to a place where I actually stood for something and then had people tell me because of what I stood for, I had to now lose everything. And then on top of that, pay the ultimate price and have to sacrifice everything to get there. And it's just like, everyone tells me, it's just like, oh yeah, he's an Olympian. Sometimes I forget, because it's just like, there were so many bad memories attached to that part of my life that I've just blocked it out. And I'm just like, oh yeah, that is right. I was like, they're like, tell me about it. I was like, it was fun. But I mean, you can't really get into these kind of in-depth conversations, in a 2-minute conversation. Everyone who's been a part of anything knows that it takes sacrifice. You have to sacrifice a lot. And I can't tell you, man, it was 13 years total that I competed in that sport, where it's just like, I sacrificed relationships. I sacrificed friendships. I sacrificed family time. When it all came to the end, I would always be sitting there just in tears most days, replaying everything, always wondering and questioning myself if I made the right decision and choosing that. And if my life would have been better had I gone, and gone the corporate route or done all these other things. But, I stopped questioning that, because it's given me a chance and an opportunity now to tell people that, listen, life is always going to put you in a position, but you're the one that actually gets to decide what outcome you have. Everybody wants equal outcomes, and you've heard it. It's like you get an equal opportunity, but not an equal outcome. Sometimes it finishes quicker for some people. Sometimes it takes you a little bit longer. Sometimes you trip and fall. Sometimes people throw things in the way. It's who's to say? Nobody can determine, and nobody can, plan out how things are going to end for you. But, it's what's the only thing that you can do in those moments, and the only thing that shows growth in any kind of situation that you find yourself in is how you respond to those kind of things. You got far too many people that are reactive now. Something happens, they want to blame somebody. Something happens that they don't like, they want to point the finger, and then they want to play victim and be like, oh, it's because of this and that. And even if that were the case, I said, how is it that people who literally had legislation built against them to keep them out of places and being seen as equal people, they work twice as hard to be seen as equal. And now the people that have all the opportunities off of the sacrifice that they gave them still want to now put that burden on their shoulders when they have every opportunity literally handed to them and they don't know what to do with it. And that's what's bothered me from now until like then. And it still bothers me more than ever now, because that's an excuse that's being used more than ever for everything.
Right.
People don't try anymore. People don't want to try. And I said, you know, you've got no excuse to make outside of the effort that you put into it to as any situation that you're a part of. And sitting back and watching it now and looking through my life, and everyone's just like, if you could go back and do it again, would you change anything? And I can honestly say, no, I wouldn't. Because I'm happier with myself, because at the end of the day, you have a lot of sellouts that are always partying, they're always drinking, they're always doing drugs, because they're trying to numb their own conscience from the life that they live, because they know it's not going to suffice.
Right.
It doesn't satisfy because it's not built on anything that can actually withstand any kind of tragedy, any kind of turmoil, any kind of tribulation or trial, that kind of thing. When your foundation is built on something sturdy, it's just like you can get knocked down, but you'll find the strength from what you're grounded in to help you stand up every single time. And for me, it wasn't money. For me, it wasn't relationships. It wasn't acclimates. It wasn't people's approval. It was my faith.
Right.
You know, my faith got me through all of those kinds of things. There were times where I had so much tears in my eyes, I couldn't even speak. I was just like, I sounded like, you know, a lovesick 7th grader that got rejected for the millionth time, you know? And all I could say in those moments, all I could do was just cry out the name of Jesus in those moments. And I remember every single time when he came through for me. And that's why unapologetically and unashamed, I say the things that I do, because I know that there's a bigger reason that all of these things need to work and come together. But you don't get it by just talking. Right. There are far too many people now, especially in our conservative movement, that all they do is talk. People don't have an opinion of their own. People regurgitate the facts that they've heard on the internet because they've seen the reactions that it gets, the views that it gets, and they think that that's what their life is accumulated to, is just clicks, views. So now when you interact with them in person, they have no people skills. They treat you like, you know, you're less than them, and we're supposed to be on the same side.
Right.
And then now they've realized that it's just like, hey, you know, doing what's right, I found a way to market that so I can get paid. Look, there is nothing wrong with you trying to find a way to earn a living and do everything else. But in the realm of right that we live in, I honestly don't feel like there should be anyone that has a price tag to do anything. Most people, when they ask me, I feel so ashamed when they're like, what's your speaker's fee? I was like, what? I was like, I don't know. I was like, whatever you feel like giving me. I was like, I'll just take it at that. Because at the end of the day, it's like, we're on the side of right. This is what's ingrained in you. This is what you're taught.
Right.
So how the heck are you now going to try and charge $1 million, $50,000? Some of these speakers' fees are outrageous, and I think that should all be drug outside and shot. Yeah, I said that on the Sons of Liberty podcast.
Hey, the Sons of Liberty did originate with Samuel Adams. With they were like violent protests in early 1700s.
Yeah, there were.
No, mid to late 1700s with the.
Everyone remembers the
Revolution.
Boston Massacre.
So, yeah, they were.
Everyone knows the shot heard round the world. You know, those kinds of things. I say that to say this: when you
not implying anything, of course, but
like
no.
Everyone who was raised properly, and the older you get, you know what right and wrong is. So where do you come across now trying to like make a living telling people what they already know? Your job as somebody in an influential spot is to be an example for people to follow. But the reason it doesn't match, and I feel like the reason as conservatives we've been so held up, is because you have a lot of people that talk a good game, but when you see them off the stage, when you see them off the camera, you can't tell if they're conservative or not, because they're out there partying, they're out there drinking, they're out there participating in everything that they condemn everybody else for doing, but this is just how they get their fix. And then everything that they've said now doesn't mean a thing.
Right.
Because you have to lead by example. I can't sit here and tell you gentlemen to be good dudes, and if I'm out here, you know, like trying to get with every person that I see or doing all these things behind closed doors, because scripture's clear. It says whatever you do in darkness will be brought to light eventually, which is why you see all these people that we respect now in public offices that could have the ability to do something. Now they're pulling themselves out because of all these things that they did years ago in private that they didn't think anyone would talk about until they got put in a higher position, and now everyone's now using that against them. You know, your integrity is something that can't be for sale, because integrity is something that walks with intention. You walk in a certain way, not trying to keep yourself from doing things in the moment, but making your mind ahead of time of what you're not going to get involved in before you're even in that situation to begin with. It's thinking ahead, and people don't do that because we live in a culture now where everything is just like, oh, just live in the moment. Whatever feels right to you in that time, whatever vibe you're feeling in this time, just go with it. You have a lot of people that get deceived in what their feelings tell them, because your feelings are literally there to steer the ship. But so many people literally rely on that then they just drift off course.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a huge problem with, I think, New England in general. I mean, we're up here in Maine, and Hunter and I are from Massachusetts, and that's a huge problem in New England is apathy among the church, just among everybody in general. I mean, we have the whole Bostonian attitude of you do you, let me do me, like just stay away, the very libertarian mindset. How do we address young men who are just purely apathetic? And how do we galvanize them to? I mean, I guess I'm really asking this for me because I'm,
Right.
Hunter and I, we're just young dudes growing up in this area. Like, how do you galvanize a young generation of men that have been so pacified?
And especially when their best role models are I don't know, Travis Kelce or somebody like that.
I
They're
was about
people
to say,
who
don't
aren't.
you dare say Andrew Tate or this interview is
But
over.
I'm saying that's who they look to. I'm saying that's who young men are looking to, and those are not.
Yeah, maybe the
actual-
answer is better role models. But
Yes.
what's your perspective
Yeah.
on that?
How old are you guys?
I'm 19.
both 19. Yeah.
Okay, do you know maybe about 30 years ago, or no, back in the 1940s and even in the 1700s at your time, kids were fighting at 13. It's all about what matters to you. And I think that there's not much being cultivated out with anything tangible outside of the internet. I think that's the biggest issue. There's nothing wrong with the internet. I tell everyone, it's just the internet is like a hammer, it's like a saw, it's like a screwdriver, it's even like a gun sometimes. It's a tool. And when you learn how to use it properly, you can build something with all of those things. But in the hands of the wrong people, it becomes a weapon.
Right.
And you can do more damage with that. And so for people like yourselves, how I get across to young men is just listen, all of you guys got wired with the same mentality. You guys are doers. When you hear a certain thing, I mean, you're engaged. How many times have you been talking to your fiance and she's venting to you about something and your first instinct is to try and come up with a solution to fix it?
Every
and
single
she
time.
tells you, she's like, I don't need you to fix it. I need you to listen.
Yep. Yep.
God wired every single man with the ability to want to be problem solvers and to want to try and find ways to do it. And now when people feel like the system and everything else are wired against them to do it, they try to find solutions in other ways. That may be illegal ways, that may be ways that lead to other issues and stuff. But innately, it's trying to teach everybody else that the only thing that you can control in your entire life is just two things. It's what you say and do to people and how you respond to what's said and done to you. I say that everywhere I go because everyone thinks that it's just I got to control my boss. And it's you can't control your boss. I was your boss may have a bunch of tasks for you, but I said how you respond when he's yelling and tells you to do all this and you do it with excellence anyway. I said that leaves more of a lasting impression on people that would expect you to fight back, cuss them out and do all these kinds of things. I said most people, when they say things now, words don't mean anything. Because now we live in such a culture where people will say one thing and you're trained to be a professional liar these days. Half of these people that are influential that talk about all this money and all these cars they have, most of them don't even have that. They just rent it for clicks and views and stuff. It's all attention seeking to make people see that this is the thing that you're supposed to get that's going to get you happiness when essentially all you're getting is just pyre. I mean, listen, cars, they get totaled. Houses, they burn up in smoke. Money, when you get it, you spend it. I said sometimes it's stolen from you, and other times it's just you can save it, but it doesn't mean anything. It's a form of exchange. If you need something, you have the capital to get it, you get it. And once it's gone, it's gone. But the thing that lasts a long time are people. And sadly, in our conservative movement, I'll even say that because, Scripture is clear, and I think Peter said it in 1 Peter. He's if judgment starts at the house of God, how bad do you think it's going to be for people that don't belong to us? Meaning that if we're going to be people who are conservatives, we need to clean up our house first so that when we say that this is what we're about and this is what we're doing, we actually can point to it and say this is what it looks like. Because right now we're telling everyone, yeah, just get married and have kids, but we're not telling people how to be husbands. We're not teaching men how to be good boyfriends. We're just telling them that this is what you got to do. And then they try to find any girl that's willing to hear the same old sweet nothings. And when it comes time to actually showing them what they're about, they got nothing to show for it. I was always taught and raised that it's just if you want to be a husband, you got to act like a husband before you become one, because it's going to be 10 times difficult for you to learn in the moment when you become one. So it's just you learn how to communicate. You learn how to do things. As a boyfriend, you learn how to be polite. You practice etiquette. You open the door. You pull out her chair. You compliment her. You make sure that when she's around you, she feels safe from any threat outside that's around her, but also she has to be safe from the main threat, which is you. You can't be exploding on her anytime you want to whenever you have a short temper on all these other kind of things that you're dealing with just because you're having a bad day. you know, things become less inexcusable for you the older you get, because at that point in life, people are going to come back with you with the one thing that you can never rebuttal, and that's you should know better. You should know better. All of these things, and I tell everyone, it's about going back to the basics. You teach people how to be good humans by practicing the things that we all know are right, because that's the one thing that everyone, when it comes to men and women these days, it's just like, who raised them? How come no one's teaching them? And it's just like, well, where their teachers lack, I was just like, you're going to be coming across a lot of people your age, older and younger, that are going to be looking to you to see how you respond and how you handle yourselves. A lot of people look at me and they're just like, you talk like you're 60 years old. I'm like, yeah, because as a 9-year-old, the only people that I could hang out with, because I didn't have any friends until my college years, were just older people from my church. I would sit. I would listen, I would hear topics and conversations, and those would be the things that I would say. Then later on, I understood what those words meant. And then later on after that, after understanding, learned how to apply them to actually make them things that you could see, things that you could live out. And that's the one thing that a lot of people don't have a lot of patience for, is to let those things develop. Because we live in such a me-centered generation where everything at the click of a button, you can have it instantly. You want food? You don't even got to cook it anymore. I was like, you can just order it and have it delivered hot and fresh to your door. I was like, everything right now hasn't been so much apathy. It's been laziness. Because the people before us had to be the ones to not only do a full-time job in a day, then after work, they had to go to the grocery store, then they had to come home and cook for their family. I was like, now people work from home, and even working from home, they don't cook at home. You have so many people that are in their own house that don't even know how the washer and dryer works, because now you have people that'll do that for you. And it's just like, and everyone's saying America ain't great. I'm like, are you kidding me? I was like, anything that you used to do for yourself to make yourself a substantial human in the society that we live in, now somebody else will do for you for a price. I was like, we are getting hustled out the wazoo. So I'm just like, you want to be good? Learn how to do every basic necessity for yourself, so that when people look at you and they see and think that you're going to be dependent on a lot of things that are going to make you weaker. Because I was like, being dependent on people ain't a bad thing, but when you rely on people for everything that you could do for yourself, that's when you become useless. So when you're able to do the basic things for yourself, getting dressed in the morning, you got people that don't even know how to do that. They got to go to Pinterest to be like, well, what outfit with this? Like, crimson and plum don't go together, so I'm just going to go with like ruby and red, that kind of thing. So all those kind of differences that make people literally not capable of functioning in anything, because when it comes to making decisions, being culpable, being all these kinds of things interactive, they don't know how. And everyone's just like, oh, it's just like, it's just what's convenient. I'm just like, convenient. I was like, are y'all on this AI train?
Only like when you like search something and it does like the little AI, like when you ask a question, it's just like a little AI explanation. That's about as far as it goes.
I absolutely hate AI.
Yeah, it does. It does.
I think it's such a crux, because if anything, and I think that really happened in the COVID years, was when it drove a wedge between human interaction, because computers, they need maintenance every now and again from a human. But I said, we're the only race that knows how to support and lean on and coexist and inhabit with each other. And when you literally take that away, you isolate people, then people become more easily susceptible to manipulation when they're by themselves, because they don't know what it's like to rely and work and coexist with other people. So I did something one day. I asked AI to snitch on itself. So you know that you can ask it what the dangers of AI are. So I said, hey, what are the dangers of AI? And it's just, number one is misinformation and disinformation. And it says the unintended spread of ChatGPT can produce information that sounds convincing, but may be factually incorrect or misleading. Its malicious use, it can be used to generate fake news, propaganda, and content designed to manipulate public opinion. You ask this thing to snitch on itself, it'll tell you.
It's admitting to it.
Then the second one, it says it's bias and ethical concerns. The third one is over-reliance on AI. People might rely on AI for critical decisions in areas like medicine, law, and finance, where errors could have severe consequences. It provides loss of critical thinking. Overuse might lead to reduced problem solving and analytical skills. It says it sacrifices privacy and data security, meeting high risks, sensitive data exposure. Users may inadvertently share personal or sensitive information. If improperly handled, interactions could be stored or exploited maliciously. Then deep fake or cybersecurity threats it poses. It has job displacement and economic impact. It manipulates on a social engineering basis, loss of human connection, lack of accountability, existential risks, and misalignment. I'm just like, and that's just the top 10. That's just the top 10 that I asked for.
Yeah, I mean, you have kids who like, there is a kid who had like an AI girlfriend, and she told him to basically kill himself, and he did it. The kid was like 13, and it's like, where are this kid's parents? And like you said, they're isolated the whole time because they think the AI is like real in their entire life. And it's definitely a threat because we don't have fathers that are around to say, hey, don't do that.
Maybe don't listen
Maybe
to
don't listen to the
robot.
AI robot. And I think that's what I hear in a lot of what you're saying, and especially your own story that you went through. Like, if you didn't have your dad there from when you were 6 years old telling you that the basic things, that you put your faith in God, that you respect other people, and you do those basic things, that kind of takes care of everything else. So I don't know if you want to talk about the father issue or not, or how that applies to what we're talking about. But
Well, I think I know it's a big issue. And I think that's another thing that people like us need to stop doing is, like, we know what the truth is. So we have to be firm in that from every stance. It's like, what do you think about that? Well, I think. I'm just like, no, because that leaves it open for debate, and that leaves it open for cross-examination.
Anthony, what do you know about this?
Leaves it open. It leaves it open for doubt. What I know is that every single young man has the innate desire to make somebody that they look up to proud. And when they feel a sense of abandonment from someone that they will never get to question, they'll never know. All they know is that someone who had the ability to be in their life chose not to be. Then they use all of these different coping mechanisms to now try and fill the hole that only a father can.
right.
And so I've dealt with a lot of young guys that, when I come around, you've only got 10, 20 minutes. And I'm just like, God, how in 10 to 20 minutes do I make all these people who feel invisible, who feel misunderstood, who feel abandoned by people, feel like they can, hello,
Gosh.
My mom.
you can answer it.
I should answer it. I should call her back.
Yeah, call her back.
We'll do it. We'll do a mom. This is a mom cameo. We'll do it.
The outtakes. I love it.
Hello?
Hello, you're on the podcast.
Oh, God.
Wow.
Do you have any?
Really supportive mother there.
Do you have anything to say?
What's the topic of discussion?
Black people.
I gotta head now.
Oh, based mom moment
She
right
feels
there.
that strongly about them.
Welcome to New England, Anthony.
That was so worth it.
Oh my goodness gracious.
She's still going to come to the event tonight.
I don't think so.
Oh, no. Wait,
She hung up.
she does know that's a joke, right? Text her back and tell her that was a serious joke.
That's gold. I'm so glad we did that.
Oh, God. I hope. Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
man.
So about fathers.
Oh man.
We were saying something about fathers. So from the Olympics, you said that thing about Black Lives Matter. And it seems like God had you there for a specific purpose, a specific time. You lose all your endorsements to somebody who's in the Olympics. Most people in the Olympics, they would probably backtrack their comments. They would go try to get their Olympic endorsement backs and everything. What did you do after that? After
How do you go from that to turning point?
Yes.
Did they reach out? Or were they like, dude, that was so base, come work for us?
Yeah, did
like,
it-
No.
How does this work?
Okay, so this was 2019.
is Charlie like, what's up, homie? Like,
saw your
come on,
clip.
we saw your clip. We love it.
This was 2019 that I got canceled. So 2020 came in like the beginning stages of the year. So I saw an ad because I think at the end of 2019 was like really at a place where I was like, I cannot be the only one that thinks this way. So I just started like scouring the internet, and I came across like a video of Charlie, because this was when Charlie did his own videos. He just sat there. He was just like, so BLM is this and this and that. And I'm just like, wow, finally someone who agrees with me. So I started listening. I started diving in more. But I mean, like, I was never a convert that came from believing a lie to doing this. Like I was someone that just wanted more information on when people said, oh, how do you feel about this? And like cops and like systems and everything else. I'm just like, I need to know how to like talk back. But see, so they had an opening for ambassadors at the time. So I filled out the ambassador form, and then like I think a month later I got a call from Turning Point and them saying it's just like, hey, you're an Olympian, like you got canceled for this. I was like, yeah. And they're just like, that is so cool. I'm like, actually it wasn't. It was like the worst moment of my life, but sure, thanks. And so after that was when they were just like, so we'd love to have you in the ambassador program. So being an ambassador for Turning Point was basically every event that they had, I got to attend for free, and I got to be in the VIP room, and I just got to meet like people and just like network and socialize.
Did you have any kind of like social media following from the comments you made, or was that kind of just
My following from the Olympics at the time was, I think, sitting around like 45,000 at the time,
Okay.
and it dropped to like 30. But I mean, for me, it's just like I was wrapped up in the wrong things back then. Like, to me, it was like every follower that I had, I tried to find a way to like keep them and then do everything else. Now, the only reason I have social media is because I have to. If I could just like be someone that shows up and interacts with people, I'd much rather prefer that. But it, like I said, it's a tool. Use it the wrong way, then it becomes a weapon. So I mean, like, it has helped me stay in touch with a lot of students. And I see it as a blessing. Most people look at it as a curse or something like that. But I mean, like, I remember going to a high school in Georgia. I won't say the high school because I don't want them to get blasted. But, like, I did something in front of 1,200 students there. And, any size audience, you need something that gets people to pay attention, but also feels like you're talking to them individually, because that's how my life was changed. I remember growing up as a kid where you heard of like famous basketball players, famous football players that were coming for autograph signings or coming to go and speak to this like group of like young readers at a library and stuff. And then I also remember how disappointed I was when I found out that because they weren't getting the money that they wanted and that they weren't going to have like as many people as they wanted to, they would just cancel the day of. And I remember that feeling of feeling so disappointed. So that's why now in my life, where it's like, I don't care if it's 12 people, 1,200 people, 12,000 people, like I go out there and I say the things that I need to for the one person that needs to hear it. And because for me, like my life was changed through my big brother. Like you guys met Steven. You met Steven.
Yeah.
I had showed up to my first event ever, and that was after announcing that I was working with Turning Point, or I was an ambassador for Turning Point, and man, the internet lit me up. They're just like, man, you Uncle Tom, you coon. I was like, you raccoon. It's just like, you runaway slave. I'm just like, I was like, like raccoons are cool. It's just like Uncle Tom helped slaves, and I mean, like the runaways got away, so I mean, like you ain't really saying anything. It's assaulting me, But like everything blew up, and it was at a crossroads because I was at a point where it's like, is this something that I really want to like see out, or is this something that I'm just going to let people make me feel some type of way about? And that's what I tell everyone else now. It's just like, you have a choice. Everyone has a choice, and every choice comes with its set of consequences afterwards. So it's like, what do you want to be remembered as, and what do you want people to say about you when everything is said and done? Because I said, everyone can talk on the internet, but I said very few people actually make themselves available to give you an in-person interaction with them, because I said that's what changes people's perspectives. People heard about Christ their entire existence, but when they experienced him in person, and when they had an experience with someone who experienced him in person, their lives were changed. And it's just like, how in the world are we having access to all the answers that really could make a difference, but yet we have no impact anywhere? Because I said the words and the actions, they don't mesh and they don't match. So when I came to Turning Point, I remember the first party that I had ever went to, someone pulled out a dime bag of cocaine. And we're just like, we're going to the strip club. And I remember calling my dad at the time. I almost cried. I was like, Dad, I thought everyone here was Christian. And he was just like, no. He's like, not everyone who says that. And my dad was always a realist with me. He's like, not everyone who calls himself a Christian is a Christian. Not everyone who's a conservative might act like it. He's like, they may be leaning this way politically, but he's just like, a lot of people say things in that. He's like, it's a road less traveled for a reason. He's like, because everyone wants the benefit of speaking out and getting all the TV time and the deals and everything else. And he was just like, but everyone doesn't know what they went through to actually get that.
right?
He said, if you're someone that can be consistent when nobody's watching, he's like, you won't change when everyone's looking at you. Because now you have so many people, when people look at them, they want to be something in front of the cameras and want to be something in front of the crowds, but then like they mistreat people behind the scenes. I was like, they're so arrogant. They're so rude. I was like, they're so entitled. And I'm just like, who the heck are you? I was like, first of all, I had no idea about who you were until I got here. And I was like, if this is who you are, I said, then I don't want any part of it. And so when it came time to joining Turning Point, that was a choice that I was left with, because I got a lot of hate. I got a lot of death threats. I got a lot of people being like, F you. We hope you and your family catch COVID and die. We hope illegals come here and murder you guys. I've had people like make threats to like my siblings and whatnot. And it really was a test to see if this is something that I was ready to go all in for. And I can tell everyone now that it's just like, if it came down to it, I am ready today to die for this, because this is where the truth is. Because look at what we just saw it do in November.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Everyone who silently, for years, we've been saying the silent majority, finally did its job. And I said the majority finally exposed itself.
Yeah.
So now we know, and now in my honest opinion, we should have no excuse to why things never go our way in the future when we realize how much support we actually have behind us. And so moving forward from there, it was me just wanting to get more involved. So I was paying out of my own pocket to go to colleges, to go to high schools, and to go talk to students and kids. And back then, the only thing I was doing was being like, yeah, I was an Olympian, I was canceled, and like now I'm like doing amazing things. And after like my third event, I got so bored with myself. I'm like, dude, ain't nobody care about your story, because at the end of the day, not everyone is training to be an Olympian, but everyone knows what it's like to be in a position where they might lose a friend or where they might get made fun of.
Right.
Speak from there, because that's where everyone can relate to. And that is what supersedes people's careers, people's age ranges, because everyone who may not have thousands of dollars in sponsorships and endorsements may feel like the 300 followers that they've worked so hard to get for their social media might all turn on them. Because I said, you take 300 people, put them in a room, that's a big audience, you know? So I don't look down on anybody for any size audience that they have, because anyone, as long as it takes one person to make a difference, then you don't know what that person will do with that once they've done that. And that's been my story since then, because the first event that I went to, I remember I call him my big brother. And he doesn't like it so much, but I love it. So when I first came to an event, I went to the Student Action Summit when we still had that, and I saw Stephen Davis speak on stage. And he said, made it very clear, cut and dry, and very simple. He's like, we can't be sitting here waiting for things to get better to join. You either join this now or you don't. Because he's like, the worst thing for anybody is for you to be on our side and just get in the way.
Yeah.
Because then you become a hindrance to what we're trying to do. So he said, if anyone here is wanting to make a difference, no matter the cost, I need you to stand up. He couldn't see me, one, because I'm black and I was sitting in the back corner that wasn't lit up. So, you know, and I took that call and I stood up and I ran with it. And ever since then, you know, like I went places, you know, but I always had him in my mind. And when I first met him in person, I had the ability to tell him, I'm just like, hey, man, you changed my life. And I know that when you're doing the same redundant, mundane routine, you don't think it's impacted anybody. I said, look at where I've gone because you were willing to stand up and say what I needed to hear when I needed to hear it. And I said, this is what I've done because of you. And now my job is to take the example and sacrifice that someone was willing to do, giving me the truth, to now hopefully make somebody else want to do the exact same thing. That's the difference, is when you can actually show it. It's not enough to say like, yeah, I just want to go inspire people. You got a lot of people that want to do that. They write crummy books that don't make any sense. They make all these asinine comments online that are just like, if you want to be a top G, oh, that's my good Andrew Tate impression. If you want to be a top G, it's not about going out here with all the Gucci bags and everything else that you want to do. It's just like, you've got to be a man. If you've got to go out there, you've got to do it. Okay, I'm not.
That's a clip.
That was
You
impressive.
got to be about it, you know?
That was so shocking. I was like, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Top G.
So, but
All the way from Romania.
that guy has got all of his eggs in a basket where, you know, if he loses it all, he's got nothing.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
the only thing that matters to the heart of a man is his life.
Mm-hmm.
And the only question that really has any weight is, what are you doing with it? It's never like the story of your life is always going to be about what people have done to you. There's going to be multiple chapters of things that people have said to you, things that you've got caught up in, you know, like things that people have done to you, times when you've doubted yourself. But I said the story that people remember is when people will think that you responded this way, when they read that when people did this, instead of doing that, they did this instead.
Right.
You know, it's taking the negative and learning how to do something good with it, because I didn't know what I was doing. I had to learn, you know.
Right.
I got humbled really bad when I did my first event and I got heavily protested, and I was just like, here it is. This is my viral moment. And then those students ate me for breakfast, man. It's just like, man, college kids, high school kids, those are some of the most judgmental people in the world at that age. And so when I had no comeback, everyone was just lighting me up from left to right. But it was in that moment that I realized that, you know, God had to pull me back. And he was just like, you're doing all of this on your own. He's like, you didn't get this stage for yourself. He said, I gave it to you. And he's like, as quick as I gave it to you, I'll sit you down. And so it was at that moment, I was just like, okay. I was like, well, now something has to change. And I said, the message is still the same. We need people to get involved. But I said, nobody's going to get involved unless it's something that I can show them how to do. And I love being involved with what you guys are doing here, because everything that you guys see in the communities, the relationships that you guys build, I said, that's where the impact happens. My job is just to encourage you to keep doing the same thing. But I said, it would have no impact if I wasn't willing to go to the places that you guys are. I've gone places where only 5 students have showed up. We've waited an hour. And then when no one came, I said, you know what? Let's all go get dinner. And we sat and had a round table. You know, the more you practice something, the better you get good at it. And it's not about getting good. I was like, you get more confident when you know what the truth is. And when it's been something that you've experienced, it's not something that you let go of lightly, because people will try to change your mind and tell you that, oh, what you experienced wasn't real, or it just happened to you. I'm like, yeah, if it just happened to me, I said, that's enough for me to go on this, because I said, all these people that are saying and going off all these feelings and stuff that they swear that they've experienced, they haven't experienced. That's why their arguments don't last in anything. That's why they have no statistical facts and nothing. They got no data to prove. And then they don't even know how to articulate the points that they're trying to make, because I said, it's all built on nothing. And I said, it hasn't impacted them. I said, you can create all these issues for yourself, but I said, until you're willing to do the work to actually go in there and actually see what the issue is and then find a solution for it, that's when you'll be somebody worth listening to, because I said, you got far too many influencers in this conservative movement of ours. Far too many. The whole role of an influencer is to give the bare minimum to people because they want something greater in exchange for themselves. Take this very small discount code, use it for me so that I get a bigger commission, follow me, subscribe to my podcast, and then they don't go nowhere to interact with nobody. They don't have anything that's actually going out there to reach people that they can't physically get to. You know, you have very few people that want to be influenceable. There's a difference. The influencers are the ones that take. The influenceable people are the ones that give regardless of what they get in exchange. They're the people that'll show up when nobody else does. They're the people that'll be there early. They're the ones that'll be there when the lights are off, and they're the ones that'll stay with you until the last task is done, because they want you to know that you got somebody that when you need somebody, when the chips are down, you need somebody to count on, and when you want somebody fighting with you in this war that we're in every single day, I was like, you can count on them. But those people are few and far between. But those people, when you meet them, man, they fight like hell, and they'll fight to the death for you. And those are the people that you want. But people like that in relationships that take that long to cultivate are the ones that take time. And because people want everything in a heartbeat the same way they want their Amazon orders or their DoorDash or their wish list or their Shein stuff, it's just like you can't treat people that way, which is why so many people have all these unrealistic and unhealthy, disgusting relationships with pets. I wish more people were bragging about being kid moms. There's nothing wrong with you loving your pet and loving your animal. I love my animals, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, it's just like, I want a son for real. I don't want to settle on something that if my dog died, I could easily replace that. You lose a real son, you can't replace that. If more people valued human connection in a way that they value the substantial things that can be replaced, because what can you do with an animal? I was like, when you want affection, you can demand it. And the dog can't, and they got no say in it. They love it too. But when you're tired of it, you just toss them aside and then they just deal with it. It gives you the sense of responsibility of someone that relies on you that you got to take care of. So you feel some sort of responsibility for it. And then it gives you the fulfillment that you need when you want it in all what's convenient for you as the owner. You can't do that with a human. If I just get tired of you and I just toss you aside one day, you're going to feel some way, then you're going to confront me about it. And if I ain't got no reason about it, it's going to make me look bad. I can't demand affection from you if I haven't earned it. And I can't demand something from you that I haven't given you myself or I'm not willing to give you. These are things that you now as adult men have to now work through. That what you want from other people have to be things that you're willing to give and things that people know without a shadow of a doubt that you're already giving, and they can point to it and tell people this is what it is. Because you got far too many people out here that want the easy way out in anything. And then in the end, it's always everybody else's fault. Yeah, I had 6 girlfriends. And they were all crazy and this and this. And I'm like, do you have 6 relationships? 2 dogs died. I was like, the common denominator in this is you. And you don't want to tell me that you may not have had something to contribute to any of that? I mean, has anyone at least asked you that honestly? If more people were able to do self-evaluating on themselves, I feel like there'd be a lot more integrity and more honesty in a lot of situations where we need it desperately, because I said, but nobody wants to do that, because to do that means you have to do the hardest thing. That means you got to criticize yourself. You got to go into the deep parts of yourself that are hidden. You got to go into deep parts of yourself that you've covered with things. And you got to go to deep part of yourself that you've ignored for all of these years because you're too scared to face it. And you have to unveil it, because then when you unveil it, then you become the one thing that everyone hates being, and that's vulnerable. Because when you're vulnerable, things hurt more. I was like, the pain lasts a little longer. The sting, you feel it a little bit longer than you'd like to. And people try to avoid that at every cost because of how uncomfortable it'll make them. But they don't realize that by doing all of that kind of stuff, they're blocking themselves from being the people that God intended them to be. God didn't call you to be someone that's anxious about everything. You got a pill for everything nowadays. I was sitting next to somebody on the plane. She's just like, I have really bad takeoff anxiety. I was like, well, what about the rest of it? Like, oh, no, when the flight's in the air, I'm fine. And then when we land, I had to take another pill. And she's like, and I have my dog with me because I was like, man, people are so anxious about everything. I was like, good God, man, when did we become such afraid of everything? People are now going to be afraid of their own shadow. Some people are, to where now they don't want to interact with nobody. And when you become afraid and suspicious of everyone, then you become targeted by everybody because now they know what your soft spot and your weak spots are. Like, look, there are things that make me afraid. There are insecurities that I still battle with every day. There are traumas that I still have to address in my own heart, but you'd never know it because I walk with an open heart. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and when things are bothering me, I tell the people that I can trust so that they help me turn all of those things into things that I can now conquer so that if someone else is going through that, I can tell them, hey, this is what I did. Because when you can apply it to yourself, that's when it becomes real to other people. You got so many people out here giving relationship advice, and they ain't never dated no one in their life. Or every relationship that they've been in, they've dated all these toxic people that they're just used to because they don't trust themselves to actually have something good for themselves. Nobody knows and nobody wants good for themselves because taking something that's bad always gives people an excuse to make a way out for themselves whenever they don't want to take accountability for nothing. I'm like, wanting the best in life, wanting what's good takes time. And it's not something you can rush. But when you get impatient, that's when you learn that maybe you should have waited just a little bit longer. It's where we find ourselves now. So moving forward in all of these kinds of things, I think the best way to be a good man, the best way to be a good female is to be one that walks secured in the person of who you are. Because that's when you don't give sway to peer pressure. That's when you're not easily swayed by public opinion. That's when you don't fall apart when you see everything else kind of crippling itself around you. That's when you walk with confidence in every task that you do. You do everything with bravery. You have courage. These are all things that we need desperately as a society that few people have actually achieved because of the process it actually takes to cultivate those things.
Yeah. Because it's about recognizing the way God made you.
Of course.
And making sure your identity is in Christ. Because doesn't matter how confident I am. If it's being confident in myself, I'm going to fail every time. Mm-hmm. But I have to be confident in God. And he will be the one who will see me through. Mm-hmm. And I think if every young man could at least acknowledge that was the truth, the society would be leaps and bounds ahead of where it is right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Bible says that surely goodness and mercy will follow you all the days of your life. It's in the Psalms, And that right there shows God's endless pursuit of man. That every day, everywhere that you go, his goodness and stuff, it follows you because he wants to bring you into what he's doing. God's always at work. He's been at work since before you and I ever existed because he stands outside of time. In his world, he's a theocracy. He's not Republican or Democrat. I was like, he's theocracy. What he says goes. And it shows by the people who follow him devoutly and wholeheartedly. Now, I don't claim to do it perfectly. But in my imperfection, I have a perfect Savior that has given me perfect grace that has worked for me every single time. But I've had to do the humbling thing of saying hey, God, I messed up here. And it's a hard thing to do. And I used to hide every facet of my heart from him until one day he told me, he's like, why are you hiding? It's like when he called to Adam in the garden. He knew where Adam was, but he was calling him. And he says, what are you hiding all this stuff from me from? He's like, you do know I saw it. I still see it. That's why you feel it.
And then he asked Adam, where are you, to give him an opportunity to come back.
And what did Adam do? The same thing that we do now. Well, God, this person made me do it. And then I didn't really know what the situation was here and whatnot. But I mean, thank God for Jesus. That's all I got to say because I'm nothing without him. And I don't even have a story without him. I'm here because I'm somebody that was convicted in what I knew to be wrong to finally say that this isn't right. And this is what I got for it. But I look at what God did in spite of that. It was hard days for me after that. I was living in my car for 2 months because I was away training. And when I couldn't afford my apartment, when I couldn't afford my coach, I got dumped. Like I was last week's garbage. I hung around for longer than I should have, waiting for things to work out, but I hung around too long. And the only thing and the only regrets that I have in my life are the times when I knew God was prompting me to do something and I didn't do it. Now, that doesn't change God's heart towards you, but it makes you more alert to what he's doing and when he's saying it. I tell everyone a story that I was 13 years old. My dad used to scream up the stairs when we got into our other house and yell up the stairs, wake up! I'm just like, good morning to you too. So one day he woke me up so gentle. He sat on my bed. He rubbed my back until I opened my eyes, and he was like, "Hey, let's go take a walk. I want to share some things with you." And I was like, I got excited because this was new. I never happened. This never happened before. I was like, yeah, I'm mostly used to my dad being an ogre in the morning, waking me up like so aggressively. So because of that, I fell back to sleep. And I shot awake later on, and then I woke up and I was like, "You still want to go on the walk?" He's like, "I already went on the walk." And so I always remember that because in that moment, there were things that my dad wanted to say to me in an intimate time between he and I that I missed. Now, doesn't mean that my dad loved me any less after that, but every opportunity that my dad gave me from then on to be like, "Hey, come here with me," I ran because I wanted to know what he was going to share and the things that he was going to open up and the insight he was going to give me. It's the same thing with God. You look at every single opportunity that that he's given you, that you might have missed, that you might have slacked on, doesn't mean he loves you any less. But imagine how much further you could be if you had just taken him on the invitation that she gave you in that moment. That might have gotten you through that season that you were just entering in, that trial that you were struggling in, or the thing that you were just getting out of. Because that's life in a nutshell right there. You're entering something new, you're going through something currently, or you're just finishing something, heading into something brand new over there. You know, it's a process. That's why he says in everything that you do, you got to acknowledge him because he sees everything. You don't. And that's why he tells you not to lean on the things that you understand, because when in a nutshell, you don't understand nothing. We weren't even born because we wanted to be. You don't believe me? Like read John, the first chapter. He says he gave you all the ability to be sons and daughters of God, but not sons born of human desire or of human will. So it's not even about the will that parents want to be like, we want to have kids. Because I mean, like even in having kids and procreating, you still got to trust God that your baby's going to be born healthy, born on time. I was like born with everything working properly. Because nowadays we're so shot up with hormones and all these other kind of things. It's like everyone, even the normal people feel like we're on the spectrum in some way, you know? And so everything has a plan, and God does everything perfectly in a way that even in a mess, he's the only person that can turn that into a masterpiece that points the story back to him.
Richard.
Shopper.
Hallelujah. Oh, my goodness.
Well, amen to all of that.
I feel like I was just in a TED Talk for an hour and a half. That was beautiful. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, that was all off the top, too.
Off the dome. That was beautiful. Oh,
Well,
my goodness.
Thank you so much for that. And I mean, I don't know if you got any closing say. I mean, I'm just trying to listen and hear everything because your story is awesome, and I'm glad that we were.
What's the last question you had on that? Let's close with that.
The very last one. Okay. Dude,
No, that's
you
a
had
bad one. That's a bad one. Don't do that one.
Oh, now I got to.
Oh, whoa.
It was about the black community. Why did you end with that?
I didn't mean to end with that.
All right, guys. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Yeah, cool. That's good. Oh, that's a good way to end it.
Fade out. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. That was great.
That was a lot of fun.